235th birthday. And this date in 1776, all the church bells in Philadelphia rang because the first formal reading took place of the Declaration of Independence. That Declaration of Independence cited the very basic values and principles upon which this nation was built. Within less than 100 years, we found our own selves in a civil war. And Mr. Lincoln was on his way down to Gettysburg. And he took that very document we're celebrating the birthday of today, the Declaration of Independence, and he perused through it to gain some inspiration on what he might say at this dedication meeting he was going to attend. Today is the birthday we celebrate of the Declaration of Independence. Yesterday would have been the 90th birthday of my father. He lived most of his adult life with one right, powerful and ample arm, and his other arm we referred to as his left arm. He left it on the beaches of Normandy and D-Day during World War II. You might refer to that as a sacrifice. But my father, as a medic, saw many young men his age give the last full measure of devotion and considered himself lucky to live in this great nation and took advantage of the opportunities to live a wonderful life, and he and my mother raised 7 kids. We're grateful for it. Mr. Lincoln was on his way down to Gettysburg, and he was looking for inspiration, and he went through that great document. And I can imagine being in a place just about like this, looking out without the aid of all these electronics and speakers. And he made a speech that only lasted 2.5 minutes. The man who spoke before him spoke over an hour, and nobody remembers his name. But Mr. Lincoln spoke for 2.5 minutes because the things he had to say were so important that they stay with us. 150 years later, we're still quoting from that short speech, and I'd like to share it with you. He said something to this effect: 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. We are now engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are now met on a great battlefield of that war to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or to detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it must never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to here dedicate ourselves to that unfinished work that those who fought here thus far so nobly advanced. It is for us, the living rather, to here dedicate ourselves to that task that is remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take a greater measure of devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Abraham Lincoln.